It's that time again. It is NHL Playoff time. First round playoff matchups begin tomorrow, April the 11th. And I've got my predictions for you. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, chilling with the big gold belt in the background. And, I've been more motivated and more excited to do this than I have been for certainly my NFL predictions, just because of how successful my other two NHL prediction videos were. One of them's up over 1,600 views, I think, and the other one's about to crack 500 or 600, and that's just great. I'm completely blown away with the support that I've gotten from those. So I was very hyped, and I've been working for a while on doing these predictions, and I'm ready to get them out to you so that you know how I think the first round of the NHL playoffs are going to go. Of course, I looked at every single first-round matchup. There are 8 first-round matchups across both the Eastern and the Western conferences, and the way I looked at them, I actually looked at them from 7 different criteria. There's 7 games in a full series. I got 7 criteria I look at. I looked at it from who's got home ice advantage, who's got the edge in scoring, who's got the edge in defense, who's got the edge in goaltending, who's got the edge in coaching, who has the edge in the intangibles, and finally, who do I have a personal bias towards? Because let's face it, everybody that does predictions has a personal bias. I'm just one of the only ones that actually admits it. So those are the criteria that I looked at in deciding who I think is going to win the series. Once I tell you about those, who I think has the edge in those, I'll tell you who I think is going to win the series, in how many games, and how the games are going to go. So it's quite involved. We're going to start with the Eastern Conference. My favorite team is the Montreal Canadiens, so I pay more attention to the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference 1 versus 8 matchup, the New York Rangers, the first overall seed, versus the 8th overall seed, Ottawa Senators. My personal bias in this one, I do have a personal bias towards Ottawa. They're a Canadian team. They're an underdog team. They've been an underdog team all season. People thought they were going to finish well out of the playoffs, and here they were trying to chase down Boston to win their division. So I always like to sort of go with an underdog, and Ottawa was like the ultimate underdog this season. Home ice advantage in the series, of course, goes to New York, being the higher seed. The scoring edge. This one was actually relatively close, but I feel the scoring edge goes to Ottawa. I know New York has some weapons. Ottawa scored around .25 more goals per game than the Rangers did this year. They got more production from their defensemen, and they have proven playoff performers. Guys on their roster like Gonchar, Spezza, Alfredson. These guys are proven performers in the playoffs, not just in the regular season. So the scoring edge in the series, I give to Ottawa. The defensive edge, I give to Ottawa as well. I know New York's got a good, solid top pair, and then a good, third defenseman. I believe their top pair is Del Zotto and McDonough, maybe? Something like that. And I know they've got a solid... Their top 3 defense is solid. However, I would rather have the top 4 combination of Carlson, Gonchar, Phillips, and Kuba than to have the top 3 combination that New York boasts. So on the defensive edge, again, got to give the defensive edge to the Senators. Goaltending edge, no question, New York. Henrik Lundqvist. Lundqvist, in my eyes, should win both the Vezina and the Hart Trophy. I think he is absolutely the reason why the Rangers won the Eastern Conference, and any success they happen to have in the playoffs is going to be on the back of Henrik Lundqvist. I believe he was the best goaltender this year, and I believe he's the MVP to his team. The coaching edge, I have to give to New York. I'm not a huge fan of John Tortorella. I think John Tortorella is this Brian Burke type character that is just, everything's okay until it happens to his team, and then it's like the worst thing that could have ever happened in the history of everything. So I don't like the double standard that Torts has for a lot of things, but he's won a cup and he's got more experience than pretty well the whole coaching staff in Ottawa. So I got to give the coaching edge to John Tortorella and the New York Rangers. The edge on intangibles, that one was tough. But again, I think I have to give the edge and the intangibles to Ottawa, based on the fact that they were season-long underdogs. They're a team. The core of the team is proven in the playoffs, and this is one of the best road teams in the NHL. So the fact that New York has home ice advantage, I don't exactly know how much that's going to mean against Ottawa when you have one of the best teams playing on the road. And in the season series, I believe Ottawa was 3-1, won 3 of the 4 games in the season series. So Ottawa's not a team that's afraid of the Rangers. We'll put it that way. Looking at the other predictions on NHL.com and on TSN and everything like that, everybody seems to be on the Rangers. Well, we're going to start this video off with a bang. I am on the Ottawa Senators to upset the New York Rangers in the first round in 7 games. I believe the first 2 games in New York, they will split. Games 3 and 4 in Ottawa, they will also split. Game 5 back in New York, I expect Ottawa's going to win it on the road. Game 6 in Ottawa on the road, I believe New York is going to win that game. They're going to go back to New York, and once again, one of the best road teams in the NHL is going to show you exactly why Ottawa wins Game 7 on the road to win the series 4-3. That's my prediction for the 1 versus 8 matchup in the Eastern Conference. Move on to 2 versus 7, the Boston Bruins versus the Washington Capitals. My personal bias here is towards Washington for no other reason than I really dislike Boston. It's not just because I'm a Habs fan. It's because of the way the team operates. The team, I feel like Boston is full of, their whole lineup is chock full of cheap shot artists. I think they're cheap players. Who pull their cheap little tactics and the majority of the time seem to get away with it. But it seemed like this year, it just seemed like every time some shit went down, Boston was on the ice. So that's just the way I feel about the Bruins. Home ice advantage in the series, of course, goes to Boston. The scoring edge also goes to Boston. They scored about a half goal per game more than Washington did on the season, and they have 6 players with more than 50 points. So not only do they have more scoring, they have balanced scoring. The defensive edge, again, I got to give it to Boston. Washington has a solid top pair. With their top pair, they both had 30 points, which is pretty good for defensemen, but their plus-minus was terrible. I think it's -8 and -15 on Washington's top defensive pair. But, I mean, Boston has Zdeno Chara. Say what you will about Zdeno Chara. He's still one of the best defensemen in the NHL. And they're a defense-first team. So you got to give the edge there to Boston, without question. Goaltending edge, got to give it to Boston as well. Washington, I think, is going to be going into the first round with Holtby as their goaltender, unless I'm totally out to left field. But again, you've got Tim Thomas on the other side. I have a dislike for Tim Thomas on a personal level, just based on his personal politics. But I can't deny his skills. I can't deny how good a goaltender Tim Thomas is. Coaching edge, have to give it to Boston as well. Claude Julien has playoff success, and he has a lot more experience than whoever was that took over in Washington. And there you go. I can't even come up with his name. The intangible edge, got to go to Boston again. They're the defending Cup champs. They're going to have a wild and raucous crowd at home. I think Boston is going to win all their home games. Boston Bruins, I will take it in 5 games. I have Boston winning games 1 and 2 at home. I have them splitting games 3 and 4 in Washington, and Boston coming back home and winning game 5 to win the series 4-1. Moving on to the 3 versus 6 matchup, the Florida Panthers versus the New Jersey Devils. I have a personal bias here towards New Jersey. I have no hate for Florida at all, but I love New Jersey and I love Martin Brodeur. So I definitely have a personal bias towards New Jersey. Home ice advantage in this series goes to Florida. Scoring edge, neither one of these teams is a real powerhouse in terms of their goal scoring, but the goal scoring edge I do have to give to New Jersey, very slightly. But again, neither one of these teams really consistently light up the scoreboard. But you have New Jersey, Ilya Kovalchuk, they have, I feel like New Jersey has more known weapons than Florida does. The defensive edge, I actually have to give it to Florida. When you look at the numbers, neither team's defensive core have great plus-minus numbers. The plus-minus numbers are all pretty well around the same, but Florida's defensemen get up into the offense more. They're more involved in the offense than New Jersey's defensemen are. New Jersey was, and forever will be a defense-first team. So, given the option, I would have to take Florida's defensive pair, given the fact that their defensive play is around the same, even though the scheme is different, but with their defensemen sort of getting more up into the offense, have to take Florida, give Florida the edge on the defensive side. The goaltending edge, Brodeur, Jersey, nothing else to say. Coaching edge I also have to give to New Jersey. DeBoer, who's their coach now, has a slight edge in experience and I believe has a better staff around him. And in terms of the intangibles, I have to give it to New Jersey as well. Again, Peter DeBoer is coming in now and coaching against the team that fired him. So he's got all kinds of motivation to make this a well-coached series, as well as Martin Brodeur in the playoffs. And, Marty Brodeur in the playoffs almost always kicks it into another level, and I have to take that, and I'm going to take the New Jersey Devils to beat the Florida Panthers in 6 games. I'll say they'll split in Florida. Jersey will win both the games once they go home, games 3 and 4. Florida will win game 5 at home. They'll go back to Jersey for game 6, where Jersey will close it out at home. So I got Jersey in 6 games. And then we go to Eastern Conference 4 versus 5 matchup, and this, I believe, will be the best series. It might not be the longest series, but I think it will be the best series of all 4 in the Eastern Conference. The Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Philadelphia Flyers in the matchup of Pennsylvania. I have a personal bias here towards Pittsburgh. I'm fairly indifferent towards Philadelphia. I don't like them, but I don't hate them. But you got Pittsburgh, you got Crosby. I'm Nova Scotian. Crosby's a Nova Scotia boy from Cole Harbour. It's like an hour away from where I live. So I do have a personal bias here towards Pittsburgh. Home ice advantage? I'm not going to give Pittsburgh home ice advantage. These are 2 teams from Pennsylvania. There's going to be a lot of Flyers fans in the crowd in Pittsburgh, and there's going to be a lot of Penguins fans in the crowd in Philadelphia. So I'm not giving either team a home ice advantage here because, again, they're both from Pennsylvania. Scoring edge, got to give it to Pittsburgh. These are the 2 best offenses in the Eastern Conference based on the number of goals they scored throughout the season. Pittsburgh's number 1, Philly's number 2. I give Pittsburgh a slight edge on the offense. They scored under about .25 more goals per game on the season than Philly did, so I have to give them a slight edge, but these are 2 teams with a lot of weapons and a lot of scoring potential. The defensive edge, I have to give it to Pittsburgh. Both teams have solid 2-way defensemen, but again, sort of like the same with the Florida-Jersey series, Pittsburgh's defensemen get more involved in the offensive play and on special teams, on the power play. So I have to give the defense edge to Pittsburgh. Goaltending edge, I also have to give to Pittsburgh. Marc-Andre Fleury has won a Stanley Cup, and he had coming off another 40-win season where I don't think he cracked 70 games. I don't think. I can't remember. But coming off another 40-win season, had great numbers across the board. Philly, they shelled out all that money to Brizgalov, but then Bobrovsky played 30-some games this year. So, I mean, you're going to shell out all that money to bring in Brizgalov as your starting goaltender, and you're only going to play him 60% of the time? I don't know. But I got to give the goaltending edge to Pittsburgh. Coaching edge? I can't give one. You have Dan Bilesma for Pittsburgh and Peter Laviolette for Philadelphia. Both of them have Stanley Cups. Both of them have success. Both of them have experience, and both of them have good coaching staffs around them. So I can't rightfully give an advantage in the coaching to either team. If you're looking at the intangibles, I think Pittsburgh has probably got the edge in the intangibles. You have the Crosby factor, the Malkin factor. Who do you cover? Who do you double team? Who do you think you're leaving open? And I think Pittsburgh has much better depth and versatility on their roster. So I have to give the edge in my intangibles to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I went a little back and forth on who I thought was going to win the series. Ultimately landed on the Pittsburgh Penguins. I've got Pittsburgh winning the series in 6 games. I believe they will split the first 2 games in Pittsburgh. I believe they will split the first 2 games in Philadelphia. Game 5, coming back to Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh will take it at home. And Game 6, I believe Pittsburgh will close it out, quote-unquote, on the road in Philadelphia. To run down my Eastern Conference predictions one more time, the 1v8 matchup, I have Ottawa upsetting New York in 7 games. I have Boston beating the Washington Capitals in 5 games. I have New Jersey beating Florida in 6 games. And I have Pittsburgh beating Philadelphia in 6 games. Those are the Eastern Conference. Let's talk about